us today is Florida State Senator Audrey Gibson. She has been involved in public matters for, several years, as much as I can recall. She is, of course, the daughter of a lady who was well known within our community as contributing to its public growth and welfare. And we here at To My Way of Thinking want to talk with the tree shakers and policymakers and those persons who are going to and have made a difference in our city, state, and nation. How are we doing, Senator Gibson?
Doing great. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. Now we're going to get right to it.
Okay.
We're going to get right to it. What is the state of our city and our state as we sit today?
They're almost equal in their state of affairs, actually, which is one of the reasons I'm running for mayor. And I want to step back just a second. I'm also my daddy's daughter too, who was a teacher. We talked about my mom, and I love my mom and my dad, but my dad was an educator at the old Douglas Anderson in Jacksonville. So I want to make sure I connect all the dots but for my parents, I wouldn't be who I am. So thank you very much. But in terms of our city, there's still a lot of division here. Lack of really focus on just Jacksonville and not let the national politics drive a wedge between our communities. And the state of the state is even more vitriolic, which is very unfortunate. And we have a governor who not only says, but shows us that he has no appreciation for diversity and no appreciation for people of color nor their history. And so that's very tragic.
How have you been able to get things done, given that? Because just about for your entire legislative history, both in the House and Senate, you've had to work under a Republican-dominated legislature. How have you been able to get things done?
Yes, not just about my entire career. I've been in the minority and in sometimes in a super minority, which makes it a little more even more difficult. So my success is because yes, I'm a Democrat. Everybody knows I'm a Democrat. But I've also been able to work in a bipartisan manner because I'm very respectful of individuals and their opinions. And my colleagues have treated me in the same manner. I don't try to deliberately throw anybody under the bus, if you will. I'm very strategic about what I do and what I say and how I relay it. Because I use data and facts and I read my legislation. And so it's hard to be disrespectful to me when I'm not disrespectful to you and I've done my homework. And also I will see my colleagues on the floor who may be the chairs of the budget committees, or I've been on the budget committee my entire career anyway. But I raise my hand and go, Senator, I need to talk to you about my project, or I need to talk to you about my charged project, Madam Chair. I need to talk to you about a project. So I don't act like I'm in the minority. I act like I'm in the majority because my opinion matters and the people that I serve matter. And I want just as much as anybody else in the chamber, regardless of party.
What are the things that you're most proud of that you've been able to get done over that time?
Oh, I have lots of pride in many things that I've done. If I start with the most recent, I guess
give us three.
Well, I passed legislation. I've passed healthcare disparities legislation recently that certainly deals with women's issues related to fibroids. I have recently brought home over $5 million for the historic Stanton downtown to refurbish that. I passed civil citation legislation, which keeps our young people out of juvenile shelters or out of jail. Oh gosh, I have brought home money for our nurses, for our schools, for and now you challenge my brain. I've passed a lot of legislation that dealt with economic development, and certainly criminal justice issues.
Mm. All right. So as we move to where you want to be,
And veterans.
and veterans, thank you.
Both.
So,
Every year I buy her money for veterans in Jacksonville.
yeah, we have the largest veterans population almost anywhere here in Duval County. So that's a big deal. As we move into where you are looking to be, do you consider the mayor's job one of building? This is a bit of a setup question, but I've heard some different answers to it. Is your job as mayor to build or to manage?
To build or to manage? Okay, well, it's twofold, I believe. Obviously, the mayor is the CEO of the city, basically, because that individual does almost single-handedly does the budget and then passes it off to the city council, right? So, and the city council, of course, has the final word, but largely, I have not seen many sitting councils reject a budget. And so it pretty much is what it is when it leaves the the mayor's office. And so from the management, I think it was manage, and what was the other one? I forgot already.
Are you more interested in being a management mayor or a building mayor?
Okay, building. So the management part is absolutely essential because the mayor is responsible not only for the budget, but for the everyday. He has someone under him. She has someone under her for the departments, but everything rises up to the mayor, right? So that's the management part. The builder part is what I think we've been missing over a number of years because we have been electing individuals with different faces, but the same philosophy. And the building part is building community. It's delivering on the promises that were made to the descendants of consolidation, right? There's some who were promised during consolidation who still live, but the descendants of those promises of consolidation, our folks are paying higher gas prices because of the gas tax to pay for what should have already happened in the first place. The building of relationships is important. I know that just growing up, and it certainly served me well being in the House and the Senate, because that is how you get things done. So I bring relationships with me to the office of mayor, locally as well as state and national, as a matter of fact. And a mayor needs to have those kind of relationships built up and to fight, I guess it's a fight against, but to build relationships. I'll call it a building process instead of a fighting one. Build relationships between different cultures in our community. There is no reason that there's no reason that anyone should be disparaging about any culture or ethnicity in our city. Nobody should be left out because of their culture or their ethnicity. And I don't believe that any mayor, I wouldn't even say of late, just any mayor in a number of years has taken the time to build community and build relationships rather than try to tear them apart, because they're so political and so concerned about party that they want to create a division, because they understand that if there's not division, the community is absolutely empowered. When there is division, the person who creates the division is empowered.
You would be mayor of quite a diverse city, consolidated as it is. The beaches have their own priority. Mandarin has its own priority. The West Side and Baldwin, of course, has their own set of issues and priorities. Arlington, is come up with some issues concerning crime and building and keeping that community together. Of course, there's central Jacksonville and downtown, the north side, the northwest side. What do you see? How are you looking to prioritize what you're going to do as mayor?
There's some issues that are very similar or the same. So let's start with like Arlington, for example. Let's think about Arlington and Northside. So Arlington, and I've lived here most of my life, except for when I lived in Southern California right after college. But obviously, I've been in both the House and the Senate for a number of years, and so I've seen the change that started. I've seen the change in Arlington that started on the north side when the decline started, right? So I have an understanding of that and what that looks like. And so one of the things in my plan is to look at those what people think are differences, because when you think about Arlington and you look at North Side, you can see some of the housing developments are exactly alike, and the way they were built are exactly alike, and the roads they were built on are exactly alike. And so if they're having the same issues in terms of infrastructure and flooding and things like that, why does one of those communities have to wait on their turn to get the infrastructure the way that it should be, and to get rid of the flooding, when we have the funds to potentially bundle? I want to look at that, and that then creates more equity in terms of bringing to the community what it needs, and nobody has to wait. And so that's a fairness issue, and it's something that we can look at because it's our money. And so in terms of needs in every single community, the quality of life for everyone first and foremost is my concern. Nobody should live in a neighborhood that is riddled with crime, or potholes in the streets, or schools that are failing. Nobody wants that kind of neighborhood or community. And so the bottom line issues in most communities are the same. Number one, it's just quality of life, and what does it take to have that within that community? And those are just what I mentioned: public safety, the core needs of individuals.
Would you be coming into office with a wait and see attitude? In other words, you want to see what the budget already has and what the departments are going to do before you set priorities, or are you going to come into office with a set of priorities of your own?
Well, the good news is I understand budgeting very well, having sat on transportation and economic appropriations budget committees, the entire appropriations committee for the entire state. And so I've already looked at, because I do my homework, I've already looked at the budget before this year, 2022. I've already watched the budget process and pulled the budget numbers for the budget that the council, I believe, will pass this week. And that then helps me to look at what the potential is for the budget that I would have to put together in July. So I would never do a wait and see that, and then have to get elected and then try to put a budget together. That's just backwards. When the information is readily available, and the history is already there, and the need is in front of me.
Well, you partially answered this already, but what are 3 budgetary priorities that you have?
Sorry, I partially answered it. So my budgetary priorities are affordable housing, which that's a big umbrella, right? Mm-hmm. But people need a place where they and their families can lay their heads. And so that issue is of critical concern. And there is Treasury dollars. There should be a tranche of Treasury dollars that will come to Jacksonville for that purpose. And the good news is, not only can they build, they can also finance. And that gives individuals an opportunity to get into a nice home that they can afford. And the finance portion, which is I learned from Treasury, and I'm going to bring that knowledge with me and be prepared to certainly access those funds that are available and bring in our folks and organizations who are already doing affordable housing plans in Jacksonville. But even the funds that are, as somebody mortgages, right? The funds that are paid as their mortgage, the organization lender gets to keep that and then turn that money back over in order to build more affordable housing and finance more people. So that's one of my top priorities. I know you said you wanted three. Three.
There is. Go ahead.
Sorry. Infrastructure, as I mentioned earlier, is critical because everybody wants to have a nice street, a nice block, and a good quality of like parks and libraries. I tell you, I looked yesterday more closely at, and I'm on the library advisory board, so I intend to take them the pictures too, at Dallas Graham Library on Myrtle Avenue. I mean, I've been there a gazillion times. But yesterday I noticed how much there was a lack of attention and a lack of greenery. And so that's important. Crime prevention, crime and safety is absolutely a top priority for me. And I will work with the sheriff on solutions. And my degree is in criminology from the Florida State University. So I certainly have the theories knowledge as well as the practical knowledge to be able to work with the sheriff on and making sure that prevention is also within law enforcement. There are, it's just not law enforcement. There is an opportunity to have prevention working in law enforcement, like civil citations and other diversion programs that can be done, as well as stemming gun violence and really having a community-wide conversation about why are these guns ending up in our young people's hands. Some of it has to do with the negligence of our own community, where they leave the guns in the car. The car is unlocked. And that's just a simple thing. We used to say when I was growing up, it's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? We should be saying it's 10:30. Are your car doors locked so nobody takes the gun out of your car? And I've met with, and I know I'm just rambling around, but I'm so excited about the possibilities for Jacksonville. And so with me as their mayor. And so I had a meeting with Melissa Nelson, our state attorney, and we talked about the issue of how guns turn over. And I don't think people realize this. It's not so much the bigger and bigger purchases of guns, but that's part of it. The other part of it is people keeping them in a safe place. And the next part is, if a gun gets stolen, you need to report it, because what happens is one gun turns over multiple times in the community. And we don't realize that it's not more and more guns that are necessarily getting into the hands of our young people. It could be 3 guns that have turned over and over and over in the community because they haven't recovered the gun that shot the last person. So that part.
Right. Well, I think you covered quite a bit. The 3 other questions I had for you, you got to them in short order. Let's go back downtown for a minute. A lot of stuff has been torn down. A lot of construction is coming up. We've got this new 40-story spire, as I understand it, that's coming up where the old Jacksonville landing used to be. I still don't quite understand what that sculpture is going to be about, but apparently we're going to get a sculpture there. Of course, we've got the Museum of Science and History that's going in on the riverfront there, and a new spire will be taking the place of what was Berkman 2, of course, Shad Khan's activity on the other end down there with the brand new hotel and some other retail amenities are going in down there. The inmates at the jail get a beautiful view of all of this and have a nice view of fireworks on 4th of July and New Year's Eve from that standpoint at the jail. Do you think that, would you be in favor of moving the jail in light of all that's happening on that Bay Street corridor?
Well, it would take a strong case for me to support it. So until that is something, and I have not really taken a long look at, because then where would the jail go? And I believe that there are probably some things that maybe can be done with the building, so that's not an issue. I think there's a little more research for me to do in terms of that, but I will tell you, it wouldn't be a priority for me when I became mayor. There's so many other things to focus on in our city other than the jail sitting there. I mean, just on on the street.
Well, it's some great real estate, and I've talked with the sheriff's candidates, and all but one, quite frankly, is in favor of moving it. All but one is in favor of moving it. The rest of them are kind of they're okay. They're okay with moving it because of the fabulous real estate issue. It is just a question of where it's going to go. So you're not quite there yet.
But I don't think that is the top priority for the people of the city of Jacksonville, in terms of any expense that it would take away from other priority projects that I have. Mm-hmm. I don't think it rises to that level today. And if it does, then that's something I'll consider later on, but it's not a priority for me walking in the door of City Hall.
All right. Confederate monuments appear to going to linger on through the mayoral campaigns in the spring. The city council, the current mayor, has laid out what a figure that he thinks would be enough to take down the Daughters Monument over in Springfield. One city councilman has laid out a figure that he thinks would also be helpful in taking the monument down. But it does appear that the council as a whole is prepared to continue to kick this can down the road. Do you have any stance on it, on Confederate monuments on public property as we look at it right now? Or are you just prepared to let the council deal with it?
Well, the legislative body obviously has responsibility for the outcome, but as the mayor, I'm very sensitive to the fact that history has not been kind to certain people in our community, that it grieves them to see monuments or emblems that are disrespectful to who they are and their heritage. And it's something that should be certainly, I think, continue to build towards consensus. There has to be a point of consensus on how individuals feel, and there is feeling about passing a statute or seeing a statute every day that reminds them of ill things in history. And I believe this community can come together and make that decision. The other thing I think that needs to happen is we should be putting up more statutes in places that represents everyone's history in this city. And that's one of the things I talked about too, in terms of the riverfront with the current, I'm not sure what Ms. Boyer's title is, but that is making sure that first and foremost, every citizen of Jacksonville can have access to the riverfront. There should absolutely be no blockage by any restaurant or any business that doesn't allow free flow of Jacksonville citizens on the waterfront. And the other side of that is making sure that there are cultural representations in the rebuild or the revamping of the waterfront. There should not be just token statues. We have a very diverse city, and if it's taxpayer dollars that are doing the refurbish or rebuild or whatever you want to call it of the downtown area, and therefore all of us should be reflected. All of our culture should be reflected in the new, whatever it's going to, waterfront pavilion or whatever it's going to be called, whether it be that artwork or certain statues or music or certain look to a certain area. All of that's important. And also that's how we increase our tourism. I don't know about you, but I think I'm just a little over being a pass-through city, going to, people going to see, now I like NASCAR, but I want people to stop in Jacksonville. I like Mickey, but I want people to stop in Jacksonville on their way and spend more than a night here. Make sure they spend maybe 4 days on as part of their vacation. We need their money in our budget too. Not they just pass through and wave right as they're heading to the next spot.
This is going to be a fortunate election for many and a historical one, quite frankly, for Jacksonville, partly because of the number of women, ladies who are running for mayor this time, and of course, the rather diverse population that is running. And of course, it doesn't make any real difference whether you're a Democrat or Republican, because it's all about who's going to get the most votes come spring. Why Audrey Gibson and why now?
The opportunity was now. That's number one. Things just, my faith is very strong and things just lined up. I just the way they should have, because I believe in divine order. I could have been in the middle of my Senate career, right? I could have decided that I wanted to run for Congress. That wasn't something that I wanted to do. And so I wanted to be able to stay home in my community. I've worked for it my entire career, but I've been traveling back and forth. I've gone to a lot of conferences too, to make sure I understood and educate myself in all things government and people. But it's just everything lined up, and I decided, you know what, I'm keeping my talent and skills and knowledge and relationships and all the things that I've been able to do in Jacksonville. And I want to watch and make sure that those funding that I brought home for different projects and safety and all of those things are actually spent and applied the way they should be and the way they were intended to be when they came from Tallahassee to Jacksonville, as well as the dollars we get from the Fed too, because I'm very cognizant of what those dollars are supposed to be spent for as well. And so I'm ready to lead, and I continue to lead, and so it's now is the time. And our city is still divided. There's so much focus on party instead of the people. It's all about the people. And the more we understand that the city council is not the legislature and the mayor is not the governor, it's the mayor of Jacksonville and the city council of Jacksonville. And that should be our sole focus. Doesn't matter if you want to, I am a national Democrat too. I get involved in national Democratic issues and events, but I know where I live. I know I live in Jacksonville. I know what I see in Jacksonville. I don't need anybody else telling me as a mayor what to do for the people of Jacksonville. And the mayor's not the president of the United States either, nor the governor. None of that. The mayor is the mayor of the people of Jacksonville.
All right. State Senator Audrey Gibson. I want to see if we can get you back the closer we get. And we're in the midst of the election fight, but I'm glad you were able to take some time to join us for this round. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you very much. I'm so excited. I'm so excited about the possibilities.
I think everybody can see it in your face and in that smile that you have. Thanks again for joining us.